Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around we are playing on the map Karakazgal as the Warriors of Chaos against the Vampire Counts, and basically after that last match where I showed just how powerful Mortis Engine with sort of support can be, I wanted to demonstrate the other side of the equation, and I figured, you know, put my money where my mouth is, give a shot to like the recommendations that I was talking about last time about what sort of composition you want to bring. So, regardless, let's dive right in. For my lord, I decided to bring Kolek as well as Dragon Ogre Shagath. Obviously, this was in case my opponent decided to bring, say, the Red Duke, which he did. He was playing as Musion. Perfectly viable. If you don't care for the other lords, can you get the Red Duke? And in case my opponent brought Terrorgeist, and of course to chase down the Mortis Engine. Kolek has 78 speed. So even if he gets hit by that debuff from the Mortis Engine, he's going to be able to kind of chase after it and apply some pressure to it and at least zone it away from the Chosen, allowing the Chosen to slowly but surely just hold their ground, grind out in the center there. Alongside him, I also, and the second Dragon over here, I also did bring a Chaos Sorcerer of Fire. This was for chaff clearing, and I wanted to give him a shot. I wasn't really 100% sold on him, but I definitely wanted to try it out. Put him on a horse. He does have evasion, he does have Kindle Flame, and also does have a whole bevy of skills here. I did bring Kindle Fireball, Cascading Fire Cloak, Flaming Sword of Ruin, and Burning Head. Burning Head, of course, is a pretty decent skill at wiping out squishy troops. It's very bad against armor, but decent against squishies. And then for my main line, I do have 3 units of Chosen with Halberds. I should note that I did bring the Forbidden Rod on the Sorcerer to get extra winds of magic. Unfortunately, it's rather risky. You'll burn your Sorcerer's health down very quickly because he has no source of self-sustain. Out on the flanks, we also do have 3 units of Marauder Horsemasters, decent melee stats backed by very decent range stats, and they can really chip away at the vast majority of Vampire Counts infantry. Honestly, or a vast majority of Vampire Counts units. The only thing they'll struggle against is actually their infantry and some of their heavy cap, but against that, that's why I've got Kolek and I've got the Chosen here. And even then, these guys do have 8 armor-piercing damage per round, so they'll still do an okay job. Regardless, my opponent, and we're immediately dashing forward to start picking away at the Mortis Engine. My opponent decided to do, once again, that Mortis Engine build. So you can see, front line composed entirely of Skeleton Warriors, so a bunch of chaff to shield it. Personally, I think Skeleton Warriors are unnecessary, especially against Chaos. They're not going to do well against any Chaos infantry, and at the same time, they're more expensive than, say, zombies. It's not like these guys are exactly mobile or something. So personally, I think zombies are a better shield, but regardless, these guys will definitely be a nuisance and very hard to clear out. Backed by the Claw of Nagash here, so obviously it's got that 36% speed debuff, which is going to make it very hard for me to catch it, but nonetheless, I can definitely, hopefully, pressure it down. I've got a lot of different tools on the field. Behind that, my opponent has 2 units of Graveyard with weapons, as well as the Sternsmen, which for my 3, obviously they won't win in a 1v1 against the Chosen with Halberds, but as the Chosen get tired, as they lose vigor from fighting all the skeletons, and finally have to face the Sternsmen and the Graveguard, they're going to be in a much worse position. They're going to be struggling a lot more. So these guys might actually work out rather well if my opponent times correctly. Finally, on the flanks, my opponent does have some Dire Wolves as well as the Dire Pack on the other end. Dire Pack, of course, very potent, and if it gets on top of my Marauder Horsemasters, it could go very badly for me because the Marauder Horsemasters are very squishy. Up in the air, the Red Duke, as we discussed before, interestingly enough, coming in with the Wind of Death, but also Elsif, Raised Dead, and Invocation of the Heck, and then you single unit of Blood Knights over there in the back. So the Blood Knights, they're not great against Kolek or a Shagath, but they'll do against the Shagath they'll do okay if they can get us around, but it's going to be very difficult here. Regardless, you can see those volleys darting in against the Claw of Nagash, just getting a little bit of chip damage. You can see that flat trajectory allowing me to score more hits there, and I immediately just plow straight through. I ignore these Skeleton Warriors. You can see that ridiculous impact damage going down on these Skeleton Warriors. They lose a massive chunk of their HP there in a matter of seconds, just a Kolek plowing through them, and they are immediately on the Claw of Nagash. Now you can see the slow going down, so Kolek's down to 50 speed, the Dragon Ogre Shagath down to 49, but if we can get our claws on the Claw of Nagash here, then it should be a pretty quick process. Fortunately for me, though, my opponent does intervene with the Sternsmen in there, throwing some troops in and getting some summons. So he's going to block me, but I did manage to zone it away. Did manage to force him back a little bit, and things are looking okay. Now, unfortunately, I actually didn't notice the Dire Pack immediately, and I didn't notice the Dire Wolves either. And so, as you can see, my opponent is kind of circling around. He's being a bit of a nuisance. I'm using Kolek and the Shagath to whittle down those troops. In the meantime, these Javelins are trying to whittle down the Claw of Nagash, and my opponent is getting Wind of Death here. So we're actually going to see it go down in a second. You can see it just plows through these guys, but it doesn't really do much of anything. I think that might have been an overcast. In the meantime, the Burning Head just plows through the squishy infantry, does a huge amount of damage, and if we look, my sorcerer is already up to 85 kills. In the meantime, I do actually engage the die pack here in melee. Perhaps a little bit of a mistake because I'm throwing all my Marauder Horsemasters in there, but I do pop the Cascading Fire Cloak on the Marauder unit that's diving into the front, so I'm hoping that these guys will soak up the charge, they'll tank it a little better, and be able to deal with them. The Dire Wolves over here don't have the melee stats to really do that much damage. Obviously, I'll lose a good chunk of some Marauder Horsemasters, but once again, they're not pushovers in melee. They got 50 armor, they've got decent melee stats, and with the backing of this Chaos Sorcerer, they should be okay. Over here in the pits, though, things are definitely looking a little more grim. I do pop a Flaming Sword of Ruin, trying to get that buff up. But unfortunately, my opponent is just chipping away at the Chosen. He's trying to hit him with Fear and Terror from the Claw of Nagash, pushing it straight in. It does have armor piercing and anti-infantry bonus, so it's basically a chariot, a very weak chariot, but it's applying pressure here. Either way, I do get a lightning strike there from Kolek. I'm trying to pressure the Red Duke, but he is popping Invocation of the Heck, and I'm struggling to get hits in, and he of course does pop El Sif on Kolek, and unfortunately it does mean I waste Star Crusher a little bit. But nonetheless, the Red Duke does take a bit of a beating here. He gets pounded in, his face pounded in, and is forced to retreat. In the meantime, the Dire Wolves over here, you can see I'm tying them down with a single unit of our Horsemasters and the Mage, while the other two units of Marauder Horsemasters get clear, and they're going to be able to start lobbing javelins at the Claw of Nagash. In the meantime, I do cast another Flaming Skull, perhaps a little bit of a mistake here, because at this point my opponent mostly lost all his squishy troops. It does plow straight through, though. It does quite a bit of damage. You can see up to 152 kills here on the Sorcerer. In all honesty, Burning Bolts would have been better in retrospect, but you know, hindsight's 2020. Over here, the Claw of Nagash getting beaten down by the two Shaggoths. It's going to be force it back. It's going to really lay pounding on it. You can see it's down to 3,000 HP. And my opponent definitely overextended here. Got a little greedy, trying to get max value with it against the Chosen. And while it's definitely getting value, it's being really pounded by the two Shaggoths. In the meantime, you can see the Javelins pushing forward, just trying to poke it down. You can see over on this flank, the Skeleton Warriors are finally going down to the Chosen with halberds. While over here, I simply leave the Chaos Sorcerer. But these Dire Wolves will just not lay off. They keep pursuing me. They keep pursuing the Wizard and the Marauders, and they're wasting my time for a little bit, but you know, we've gotten clear. We're going to be able to start lobbing javelins in there, and my opponent's definitely in some rough shape, and he's trying to get that Claw of Nagash clear, use that regen to keep it alive, but it does take a hit there from either Kolek or the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, not entirely sure who, and I'm ignoring the Red Duke here. A bit of a mistake. I should have turned to face him a little sooner, but nonetheless, Kolek and the Shaggoth will be able to turn around shortly, start laying the smackdown. You can see the claw goes down, and these guys really doing a great job of just picking it apart, and they've already paid for themselves. The Blood Knights do plow in, but it's a rough spot for them. Granted, they'll do some damage to the Chosen on the charge, but the Chosen will hit hard in return. You can see the Javelins will be poking at them, hitting these guys in the rear. As long as they're engaged in melee, they don't get the benefit. They have a special ability on the Blood Knights, the Flag of Blood Keep, but as long as they're in melee, they lose that, so they don't get that missile resist. You can see my opponent's trying to pull away here with the Blood Knights, but Kolek does dive in. Unfortunately, he's been hit by LC, but there's nothing I can do. I should probably try to pull into my Chosen, but it's a really rough position. Either way, we do push in. They do get hit by breath, and these Blood Knights are really going to take Kolek to town, especially with the Red Duke diving in and landing another meaty hit on him. And I do believe he's been hit by El Sif. Actually, I think it just wore off, but regardless, I do dive in on the Red Duke with the other Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, who should be able to outduel him. But you can see he's also getting chipped down by those Blood Knights, so definitely some rough stuff, and there's no way I can really guarantee a pursuit with those Blood Knights in there. Meantime, you can see the Marauder Horsemasters trying to circle around, trying to get more poke damage. I'm really trying to optimize my usage of them there, and whenever the Chosen Halberds come back, I try to push them back into the fray. Just tie these guys down, keep this infantry contained between the Chosen with Halberds, and poke everything else down. You can see over here the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth doing a great job just dealing with this annoying units, dealing with the Blood Knights, who are going to crumble and fall apart here. And Kolek is actually going to rally. He's going to stabilize over there. It's his first round of the game, so it's okay. He gets a little bit of forgiveness there. You can see that flat... Now, granted, the Javelins, they're not super great as far as shell velocity goes, but they've got much better trajectory and much faster projectile speed than the throwing axes. So you can see they're kind of able to hit the Red Duke there. They're kind of able to focus him. Unfortunately, my Chaos Sorcerer fires not long for the world here. He gets hit, and he gets hit twice. He's going to get terror routed and immediately broken. And you can see my Marauder Horsemasters here. They don't have that much range. With 90 range, they're really struggling to put the damage in on the Red Duke, and I'm forced to try to cycle around this mob of Graveguard, which is a little aggravating, but nonetheless, you know, with the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth in there, with Kolek coming back, I do have a decent chance here, just pounding these guys down. The Sternsmen are very low. The Graveguard with great weapons are very low. These guys are going to get chipped apart. You can see these Chosen are just going to hold their ground. Granted, they get breath there, and it does huge damage, something like 2,000 damage done there. But with all this chip damage going through, these Graveguard with weapons are going to collapse pretty soon. You can see all those javelins are going to start flying back up towards the Red Duke. He's not going to like that at all. He does feint a dive there, perhaps getting a little ahead of himself, but he really doesn't stand it against Kolek, and he does pop El Sif there on Kolek, but against him plus the Dragon Ogre Shagath, incredibly risky move. 2 hits from the Dragon Ogre Shagath would put this guy in the dirt, and so my opponent really is not going to do that. And one of the important things to keep in mind about El Sif is if you look at its effects, it does nothing to melee attack. So if you go in, you're accepting the fact that you're going to get hit just as hard as you normally would, which is still rather risky. And you can see, unfortunately for my opponent, though, all those javelins just raining death into the poor Red Duke and just chipping away at him. Chip, and his HP is dropping. He's only got 70 armor. Even with 25% missile resist, he's not that tanky. And despite his regen, occasionally, despite the fact that he does have some regen, it's just not going to be enough. Over here, these Chosen, despite getting breath, are still in okay shape. They're going to be more than adequate to take on some haggard zombies there. Kolek is going to dive in here with the other Dragon Ogre Shagath, but unfortunately, he's actually going to rout. So a little surprising there. He does actually break and route there from just pulling away. I'm not quite on top of my micro here with this Dragon Ogre Shagath, but my opponent, trying to get a little cheekier with the Red Duke, is going to pay for it with the Red Duke hitting critical binding, taking a few javelins to the posterior, and promptly start crumbling, disintegrating, and he's gonna fall from grace fairly shortly. You can see he does fall there, and with that, the rest of my opponent's army is gonna fall apart. So definitely showing, I think, what you need to do with this matchup. Now, granted, I'm not entirely convinced that I definitely think there was something that could have been done better with magic selection. There was definitely some things I could have done better with how I used Kolek and how I used the Dragon Ogre Shagath. Sometimes I got a little overzealous chasing the Mortis Engine for no real reason. I could have easily just pulled back, gotten that nifty charge, and just pulled away. Chosen did a pretty great job, except for the one unit that routed very quickly. The other two held their ground to not quite the bitter end, but they held pretty well, and one of them stuck around to the very end, doing great. 280 kills, some immense damage there. Obviously against chaff units by and large, but still, they hold. They'll trash anything of lower tier. The Marauder Horsemasters did an okay job as well. They tore through the 2 dire wolves, so they're supposed counters, and helped. They were the key unit in killing Claw of Nagash, and then in killing the Red Duke, and I think they're actually a very solid unit. People often underestimate just how powerful the Marauder Skirmishers can be, and in fact, when they do pick Marauder Skirmishers, they often bring throwing axes, but the throwing axes with their bad trajectory would be a little iffy. For my example against the Red Duke there, he's flying around, you'll be using thrown axes, and first of all, you might not be able to get in range because their range is only 70, and second of all, you might not be able to hit against a target like that, and even against, and it's completely unnecessary against the Claw of Nagash. It's really a weapon. Throwing axes are only really good against, say, Graveguard, Blood Knights. So I'm actually a big fan of the Marauder Horsemasters because they're a decent, versatile unit. They're basically a pseudo light cav and skirmisher all rolled into one. So nonetheless, great game to my opponent, Zergling Claw here. Definitely a cool and I think fairly decent build. If I was going to give any criticism here, I'd definitely drop the skeletons in favor of some zombies, and maybe the Tithe, and try to cram in some additional anti-large somehow. Honestly, if you're going for this sort of build, you're relying on the Claw of Nagash to wipe out squishies, and you mainly need to just protect the Claw of Nagash. It's all about about putting your enemy on a timer. You need to have the tools to defend the Claw of Nagash against whatever your opponent might bring. So the Dire Pact counter skirmishers, dragons or Terrorgeist or units like that to apply pressure. Is my personal opinion on that. But nonetheless, great game. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do hope you found it informative, and hopefully showed the kind of the counterweight to the matchup I demonstrated earlier with the vampire counts. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.